I saw this news today. Did you see it? Volunteer 28 in Oxford coronavirus vaccine trial dies in Brazil. Oh, yikes, that's not good. Let me read a little bit. A young volunteer in the University of Oxford and AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine trial has died in Brazil. According to Brazilian news site Globo, the 28-year-old participant passed away as a result of complications from COVID-19 on Thursday. Brazil's health authority, Anvisa, and Oxford University confirmed the death, but said the clinical trials will continue. Oxford said an independent review had revealed there was no safety concerns with the vaccine. So one of your guinea pigs just dies. And by guinea pigs, I mean humans. And he was a young man, 28 years old. And young men 28 years old almost never die from the coronavirus. And you're saying he died from the coronavirus and he's part of your vaccine trials, but there's no safety concerns. You realize that you saying there's no safety concerns when someone in your vaccine trials literally just dies from the virus. You realize that, and that in fact makes you sound even more dangerous, don't you? So are we going to be forced to take these vaccines? And by forced, I don't mean necessarily someone holding you down and jabbing a needle into you, but actually that wouldn't really surprise me. But by forced, I mean the same way other countries are forcing things. In Australia, they have a phrase, no jab, no pay. And they're talking about jabbing a Chinese-made vaccine in you. So you know it's only the bestest vaccine you can get. I don't know if you saw this a few months ago.
I suspect the majority of Australians will get vaccinated, and there will be a strong public view that those who choose not to get vaccinated need to. There needs to be some sort of incentive stick, perhaps, through the current programs, including no jab, no pay, to make that happen. So I think that is a very reasonable interpretation of what the PM had to say today. Again, looking at specific things like not being able to go into restaurants, not being able to travel internationally.
So sure, this upcoming vaccine will be completely voluntary. It's just that, you won't be able to go to work or go to a restaurant or travel or get paid if you don't get jabbed. But yeah, choice is yours completely. It's voluntary. Here's Jacinda Ardern, the newly re-elected Prime Minister of New Zealand, who goes even further. She puts people in prisons until they comply with her health demands. But as she laughs here, it's completely up to them how long they're going to stay in prison.
That I wanted to, I've got a number of questions about people refuse, what do we do if someone refuses to be tested? Well, they can't now. If someone refuses in our facilities to be tested, they have to keep staying. So they won't be able to leave after 14 days. They have to stay on for another 14 days. So it's a pretty good incentive. You either get your tests done and make sure you're cleared, or we will keep you in a facility longer. So I think most people will look at that and say, I'll take the test.
Yeah, hilarious stuff there. Justin Trudeau has bought 37 million syringes, which just happens to work out to exactly one for every man, woman, child, and baby in Canada. I say again, there has been a single death in Canada under age 20 from the virus, and that case had terrible pre-existing conditions. So if there's 10 million people or so in that age bracket, and literally only one died, you have a 1 in 10 million chance of dying from the virus if you're a young person, as close to zero as possible. But do you think a brand new, rushed to market, made in China vaccine, or even the one that Oxford's testing in Brazil, or whatever, do you think it'll have a higher or lower risk than the 1 in 10 million that the virus poses itself for young people? 1 in 10 million risk for under 20s, but no jab, no pay. Stay in jail till you do it, or at least don't travel, don't work, don't go to a restaurant without your certificate.
I think the public has to know this is one of the worst case scenarios in terms of an infectious disease outbreak, in that their cooperation is sought. If there are people who are non-compliant, there are definitely laws and public health powers that can quarantine people in mandatory settings. It's potential you could track people, put bracelets on their arms, have police and other setups to ensure quarantine is undertaken.
Yeah, that's from a documentary she did a few years ago. Imagine that woman in charge of your freedom. Which brings me to this modest proposal by Justin Trudeau's Public Works Department. As you can see, it's from the federal government's procurement website through Public Works Canada. This is where all the things that the federal government buys are listed. They have lots of rules in English and French. This is where they publish their requests for proposals, RFPs as they call them, where they ask companies to bid on projects. Sometimes they have sole source projects too, often to liberal insiders. But look at this one. It's titled Service Providers for Federal Quarantine Isolation Sites. Oh, really? Oh, yes. It's a tender notice, letter of interest, request for information. So this isn't the contract yet. It's feeling around, asking companies to tell them their big ideas. It's like a brainstorming session for companies that specialize in private detention facilities. So you'd expect private prison companies to be sending in all sorts of proposals right now, proving how good they are at managing private prisons. That's what a quarantine isolation site is. It's a prison, but for people who are not criminal. It's a prison for people that Theresa Tam thinks should be locked up for whatever health reason, perhaps for not wanting to get jabbed. Let me read this for you. As you can see, they have a window called Region of Delivery, and you can see they list every single province and territory. And to the left of that, they say who the end user is. That's Public Health Agency of Canada, so that's Theresa Tam. And under that is a general description. I'm going to read what they say. It's going to take me about a minute to read it, but bear with me. I think it's actually pretty interesting. The Government of Canada is considering engaging a third-party service provider for federal quarantine isolation sites that will be used to house and care for people for public health and other related federal requirements associated with the COVID-19 pandemic response. The government is seeking feedback from current service providers about potential options for standing up, operating, and managing all of the services associated with these sites. The purpose of this request for information, RFI, is to seek feedback from potential service providers in order to develop a strategy for the potential future management of these sites going forward. Should the Government of Canada determine that a third-party managed solution going forward is a viable strategy, Public Services and Procurement Canada may issue a request for proposal to provide suppliers the opportunity to bid on the services required as per the schedule contained in this document. Okay, thanks for letting me read all that. I just wanted to set the table here. These detention centers are for public health reasons or other reasons related to the pandemic. Hang on. What are non-health reasons for a detention center? Why, it's non-compliance. For people who aren't sick, they're not a health risk, but maybe they're a political risk. As Theresa Tam said in that film clip I showed earlier, it's for people who won't do what politicians tell them to do. I find it odd that the government is asking for tips on how to do all this. They're asking for vendors to dazzle them with ideas. Hang on, you either need something or you don't. As a government, why would you tell the world's prison companies to hit you up with their best shot? Hey guys, just dazzle us. I don't know what I want, but I know when I'll see it. Impress me, guys. Well, why are you asking the world's private prison companies to come up with solutions for you? If you ask a jail builder to come up with an idea, it's probably going to be an idea for building jails, I'm guessing. You're begging the question. Now, there's a lot of documents linked on this site, but I'll just read from the first one, published about a month ago. The document repeats some of what I just read at length, and then it gives us some more detail. I'm going to read a little bit of this for you. Under the current emergency order in council, all travelers arriving in Canada must have a suitable place to isolate or quarantine. Public Health Agency Canada is currently managing 11 designated quarantine sites, DQS, in 9 cities across Canada with a capacity to lodge up to 1,600 travelers. Public health regional staff are responsible for the management of 9 quarantine sites across Canada, with logistics, cleaning, transportation, food, and nursing services provided by external providers. Really? Did you know that? Did you know there's 11 quarantine sites in Canada right now? 11 of them, out of the 11, 9 are run by the feds, 2 by private companies. I didn't know that. In 9 cities, who's in there? They actually list on page 11 of this document where the existing detention centers are. Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, Montreal, but also Kelowna, Fredericton, St. John's, places like that, Whitehorse even. Why? Page 12 has their wish list of cities. They want to add Saskatoon, Charlottetown, Iqaluit. Why on earth for? Is it really people who are returning from abroad and have no place to self-quarantine as travelers? Is that really it? Because, by the way, last I checked, and I just checked this morning, There were only foreign flights coming into 4 Canadian cities: Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Montreal. So why would there be quarantine camps in other cities? Who's in there right now? Why would this need to be expanded? I'll read some more. At this time, the designated quarantine sites are being used to address the COVID-19 14-day quarantine requirements for international travelers not having a suitable place to isolate. Over time, the use of these DQS, designated quarantine facilities, may be temporarily discontinued until needed again by the Government of Canada, or maybe used for other requirements. Really? Other requirements? Like what other requirements? What does that mean? I'll read some more. In anticipation of a possible continued need for quarantine sites over the next 1 to 2 years, given the COVID-19 pandemic, Public Health is considering having a third-party service provider provide and manage the existing sites and all of the related services on its behalf. Public Health may also consider expanding its site footprint to other locations provided in Annex C. That's what I just read to you, their wish list of cities. So this is going to take 1 or 2 years. So much for 2 weeks to flatten the curve, eh? What does that mean, 1 to 2 years? Now, I'm not going to go through this whole document. I invite you to do so yourself, but I note this. Security services 24x7, I guess 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at the sites by licensed security guards, which will be contracted separately. Oh. So is that security like, I don't know, mall cops? Or, the security guard at the bottom of a skyscraper, just to make sure people are orderly, no hobos coming in or whatever. Is that what it's like? Or is it actually the opposite? Is it security to keep people in, like in a prison? And look at this, the request for information stage is ending, and we're moving to actual bids, and they plan to award the contract in March if they proceed. Are they actually going to do this? Now, look, I do not believe in conspiracy theories. The world is insane enough as it is. You don't need to give yourself a fictional problem to worry about. But this is not fictional. This isn't some fake email allegedly leaked from the Liberal Party like something that's being circulated online right now. No, this is a real thing on the government's real page for Public Works. This isn't a conspiracy. This is the Public Works Department telling you their plans and inviting private prisons to come up with creative ideas. The 37 million syringes isn't a conspiracy theory. The dead vaccine patient in Brazil isn't a conspiracy theory. This is the most interesting story in Canada, I think. It truly reads like dystopian science fiction. So why aren't all the Justin journos in the media party covering it? Well, that question sort of answers itself, doesn't it? That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.